So indeed, a presentation on climate change scenarios, also including sea level rise and cyclones. Now, first of all, why are we looking at climate change? Probably very obvious for most of you, but still briefly, it can impact the physical system in many ways. Sea level rise has many impacts. Cyclones, the intensity and frequency can change. Precipitation and magnitudes can change over the whole basin, also locally in Bangladesh, of course. And temperature changes also impact river discharge, sediment, etc. And that, of course, in its turn, all will have a very substantial impact on the socio-economic system. So in this component of the project, we had a few objectives, mainly focusing on current trends or observed trends, and looking at data recordings of rainfall, temperature, cyclone frequency and intensity. And for the same variables, also looking at future changes. And that, of course, it's more projections coming from models. Sea level rise was originally not included, but it was decided to include it in the analysis as well. Now, this is a schematic view of the analysis, and so essentially two parts for each component, looking at past trends, where you, in most cases, we have data, measurement data, analyzing this data, trying to detect potential trends. And then the next step is looking at future scenarios with different models, and special emphasis on the uncertainty, because as you will see later on, the uncertainty is very large. And that's also, we saw that in previous presentations. Now, and this is a bit of the project context. So this is our part of this presentation, and we're looking at those trends and climate scenarios. And that information serves as input of the numerical models for the morphological models, the river discharge models, etc., by which in the end the Bangladesh Delta is modeled and the impacts of climate change can be quantified. Now, as sort of a side note, in general, we advocate what we call a tipping point approach. So why is that? As I mentioned before, the uncertainties are very large. You see that models are not in agreement for future scenarios. So in our view, it's not best decision to, let's say, select only one scenario and analyze that. So it's better to beforehand select a whole range of scenarios, for example, plus 20% or plus 40% rainfall or river discharge, but also perhaps minus 20% or minus 40%. And then to analyze what impacts may that have on the system under consideration, Bangladesh Delta in this case, GBM Delta. And then the next step would be like, okay, looking at these scenarios, when could those changes potentially occur, to have at least some idea of the time that you may have to adapt. And yeah, that's schematically shown over here.
Full screen?
Sorry, is that a question?
You share screen in full length, both sides.
What do you mean? You don't see the screen at full length?
Full screen. Hello, excuse me. View option.
I don't hear the sound, so
Please.
I have the slideshow option.
Under slideshow.
You are sharing the wrong screen.
Ah, okay. See.
Slideshow.
Sorry. I have more experience with Teams than with Zoom, I have to admit. Yeah, you can stream slideshow. I push slideshow, but now I guess you still see the other screen, or not?
Present slideshow and pages and view of
Is this better?
Okay.
Okay. Sorry for that. Okay, so we look at we analyze at different spatial scales. So we looked at the entire GBM basin. We looked at the country scale of Bangladesh, and we zoomed in to different morphological zones in Bangladesh, and in the end also at the 5 selected folders. And we present or analyze results for different seasons. First of all, the winter, pre-monsoon, monsoon, and post-monsoon season. And those I will discuss with you today in this presentation, but also we analyzed it separately per month. Now, first analysis, looking at precipitation, past trends. So what you see here is approximately 30 locations for which we have precipitation or rainfall data. And we analyzed trends. And let's say the different colors that you see are shown in the table. So in dark blue, if a location is colored in dark blue, that means it has a major decreasing trend. If it's light blue, then it has a minor decreasing trend. And the red colors indicate increasing trends. And circles that have no color, those are the locations for which no trend was observed. And as you can see, there is quite there are some spatial differences. So some locations there is quite a strong seasonal trend. And this is for the pre-monsoon season. But yeah, lots of other locations also there was no trend observed. So that's varying results. Now we did this analysis for 4 different seasons and for the whole year. And the letters that you see here on top of the table, PS, MK, SM, WMW, those are different statistical tests that we applied to make sure that we had a whole complete view of the relevant statistics. And then we saw that, especially in this case for precipitation, the year and the post-monsoon and also a little bit monsoon had some increasing trends. And this is, let's say, all stations pulled together. Then we looked at temperature, and there we saw a much stronger trend, especially in the monsoon season. So on the left, you see a lot of dark red colors. So those are all locations for which a very significant trend is observed over the last decades. But on the other hand, if we look at the pre-monsoon season, it's a whole different picture. There we actually see a mixture. So it's a little bit in the south, some locations have increasing trends, whereas in the north, some locations have a decreasing trend. So it's much more mixed. And this again is when we pull all the locations together, we see that for the monsoon and post-monsoon season, there's a very strong trend. And as a consequence, also for the year as a whole, but the pre-monsoon and winter seasons is a much more mixed picture. Now then, so those were all about past trends. Then when we look at future trends, what we did is compare results for 5 different IPCC approved climate models. And for those 5 models, we considered 2 different emission scenarios, the RCP 4.5 and RCP 8.5. And on the right, you see an example of a map from those climate models that gives you a little bit of an idea of the scale on which these climate models present their data. Now, and what is very obvious when we compare those models is that the differences in projections between those models models are very substantial. And this is just an example. For the year 2018, we compare the 5 different models, and you see the numbers and the patterns are very different. Some project increases at locations where other models project decreases, and vice versa. So this is really an illustration of the large uncertainty that we are dealing with. Now, this uncertainty, we try to pull that into one figure. That's what we've done here. So this figure contains quite a lot of information. So let me step you through this. What you see here is 5 different plots, and each plot represents a different season. So the pre-monsoon, monsoon, post-monsoon, and winter. And the plot on the top left is actually for the year as a whole. Then in each plot, you see 4 different years, 2020, 2040, 2060, 2080. You see that at the horizontal axis. So that shows the year for which the projection is made. And the projections are all about the percentage increase or decrease in rainfall compared to the reference situation. And the reference situation is the year 1990. Now, what you then see is for each year, you see 5 different colors, and each color represents a different polder system. And polder systems are shown on the lower right. And then also for each year and for each polder system, you see 10 symbols, so triangles and circles. So each symbol represents a model projection. So we have 5 models and 2 different RCP climate scenarios, and therefore we have 10 different projections for each polder system. Now, what is clear from this picture is that you see a very large range between all the model projections. Where in some cases you see a little bit of a decrease projected in the rainfall, whereas other models project a very substantial increase. So these pictures, it takes a little bit of time to see what information is in there, but overall they summarize quite nicely the uncertainty in those projections. Okay, then tropical cyclones. We did an analysis based on historical tracks that we have available since 1972. And also we looked at available literature. And the main conclusions was that we saw a decrease in the overall frequency of tropical cyclones. That was when we looked at all cyclones. But if we look at the most extreme tropical cyclones, there was actually a little bit of an increase. And we found that to be consistent with literature. Now here are some percentages of tropical cyclone frequencies that we looked at. So the median values are not that shocking, -5, +5, +4. But underneath you see that there's quite a substantial uncertainty associated with these projections as well. And these projections are based, as you can see on the lower part, based on assuming a 2 degrees increase in global mean surface temperature. Now that sea level rise, we did an analysis of past trends, so looked at literature, and we looked at the future projections from IPCC, the SWOP report. For the whole delta, you see that when you look at sea level rise, the spatial variation is relatively limited. So it's quite uniform, which is not a very big surprise. Now here a big graph of all the different projections of sea level rise. And just to show that, again, on the left you see different percentiles. And then in the table itself, you see different years in which a specific value is reached. And this again highlights the quite substantial uncertainty with these kind of projections. So the main conclusions on rainfall and temperature. So looking at observed, there is some increase in the post-monsoon season and a slight decrease in the winter season. And for the temperature, there's a substantial increase in the monsoon and post-monsoon season, and the trend is less conclusive for the winter and the pre-monsoon season. When we look at projections, we see that for rainfall, slightly wetter post-monsoon seasons and slightly drier winters on average, but the uncertainty, as discussed before, is very large. And with temperature, we see a very strong increase in all seasons and in all models. So in that sense, there is consistency, even though even there is quite some uncertainty. And the largest increase in temperature is projected in the Himalayas. And, the plots on the right show an example of two different models where you see the increase in the Himalayas is largest, but also again, the differences between the models are quite substantial. For sea level rise, that was also mentioned before, it's important, but subsidence is considered to be more relevant for the coming decades still, because it's substantially larger than sea level rise. So we're looking at relative sea level rise, subsidence is the dominant factor. Differences in sea level rise across the delta are low. The differences in relative sea level rise are not, those of the subsidence. And then for tropical silence, as mentioned before, it's likely that the changes, the warming of the oceans will increase the intensity, so more powerful tropical cyclones can be expected. When you look at historical data, the most severe cyclones have increased in intensity, but the total number does not really show a very clear trend, a slight decrease even. And future changes in frequency intensity, we have projections, but again, those vary substantially. And that was my presentation.